Helps if I turn the microphone on. Hello and welcome to another real-time storytelling on the Cave of Chronicles. Hey Tootie. Where we create a story in real time with chat. Hi Legion. So the format is, there's about 10 minutes from now during which chat gives me any ideas they've got, and then the following 20 minutes of me telling a story, utilising as much of that as I can manage to cram into it, depending on quite how crazy it turns out to be. Tootie, I'm looking at you. So that's what we have going. That's the format. And that's what we're going to be doing. So if I look slightly confused, that's largely because what's supposed to give me data isn't doing. So I've got no idea what's going on at the moment. Other than that, we have currently running At the Mountains of Madness, which runs till the end of the week. Then on Saturday, there is an uber long complete version that is 6 hours 22 minutes long in full, and took nearly 24 hours to get up onto YouTube. So that will be coming out. Then the format will be switching, and the following Saturday we will be switching to, for the main video, once a week, 5 o'clock on a Saturday. That's 5 o'clock UK time. So we'll see how that happens. Though quite unexpectedly, last week, not last Friday, the Friday before that, suddenly went boom on YouTube, and got over 1,000 views, whereas before that most have been 50 or 60. And last Friday's hasn't done that badly. Don't know how today's release has gone, because it's only been out for an hour. So that's kind of the state of things. After today, there won't be a live for a couple of weeks because I'm going to be away. And at least for the foreseeable future, I'm going to make it just Sundays, so that we don't end up with me working like a madman trying to sort out the main videos during the week and not having enough energy on a Thursday and having to cancel at the last minute. So that's kind of the state of the world, and I will probably, because there's lots of stuff, be on the beginning of this. Demon painting of an eldritch horror that haunts and kills people. Victims become new paintings in a demonic haunted mansion. Each painting is something horrific. Okay, I like that, Legion. I like that quite a lot. Now we just need to wait for it to be tutified. And all the demons are mad headless squirrels. Ooh. Just argue with my microphone for a moment. Millie the mouse. Well, it's just enough to be legally distinct from certain other mice. I'll see what I can do with getting her into Legion's idea. We're only 4 minutes in. I have got no idea how many viewers we've got right now. Can I get this to refresh? I'm just trying to get the data to sort itself out. won't. Now I've got some data. Not saying it's the right data, but I've got some data. So, yes, an addiction to So, 5 minutes in, it looks like it's only you guys in. Anyone else, if you're watching, feel free to join in chat. The more ideas, the better. This first 10 minutes is liable to disappear first thing tomorrow morning. Oh, it's quiet in here today. You're not supposed to encourage him, Legion. He doesn't need any encouragement. I don't know whether I'll manage Nutkins being in attendance today after his very strong showing last time. Tutti, you did see the picture, didn't you? Oh. Looks like we just got another viewer. Whoever you are, hello, welcome. Feel free to chat. For anyone else that's catching this, if you haven't already, feel free to like, subscribe, click the bell, select all the usual stuff. I thought you would like it. I've just seen your previous comment. I'm so glad I saw it before I started trying to tell a story. So, Millie the mouse gets saved by Sir Nutkins. They fall in love and have demon babies. 2 minutes and counting. Sounds easy. I so want to get you to do one of these, Tutti, where I get to pick your ideas and you can tell the story. Though at the same time, the idea terrifies me. 1 minute. I think you may well be right there, Tutti. Almost time. Oh, also, Patchwork's up and running, so I might try creating some stories with that as well again. And here we go. The tour moved quietly through the Hermitage. They were lucky they didn't have to face the crowds. Normally the Hermitage in St. Petersburg was so crowded you could barely breathe, but this was a private tour to see a new viewing. So as they went round, room by room, seeing the magnificent decoration, the great paintings from all of the masters, they got taken to the quiet private side gallery, supposedly with artworks by Rasputin. Going in, there was a huge self-portrait at the end. All of this work supposedly previously unknown. No one had been aware that the mad monk had been a painter before his death by poison, hanging, shooting and drowning. And even then, rumour said that the mad monk was a demon and had still escaped somehow. The self-portrait of the scraggly bearded, black-haired, greasy man, unclean, unkempt, surrounded by scantily clad women, had a sort of red, hellish apparition round the side of it, and there seemed a kind of view to the mad monk's eyes as he stared out around the room, looking at everybody at the same time. Everybody paused and gasped as they saw the painting, almost as though there was a red flash in the eyes. Everyone thought that the image was looking into their souls. The curator, a strange, small, hunched little man, turned to them all. "Welcome to the gallery. Here we have the main work at the far end by the great man, the Lord Rasputin himself. This is the only picture you see today. Down the sides you see the curtains covering the frames of the rest of his works. They, we have been told, are only allowed to come visible on the first day we open to the public. But look, come closer, see the artwork in this magnificent piece, the only piece known to be a self-portrait, to show what the great man thought of himself." There was a concern amongst the crowd with the repeated words of Lord and great man, talking about a mad monk who was supposedly evil incarnate. There was an air of zeal to the man telling them. He proceeded to go on with some of the life and times, the story of Rasputin up to his death in the lower area, dining area of one of the various palaces in St. Petersburg. Looking, they came up, but there was something horrible and disturbing about the image. Most people backed off, but four stepped forward, looking at it, eyes wide. The man looked. "It is time. Let's go." They turned and wandered. The four people that had stepped in, looking at each other, starting to talk in hushed tones. "What did you see?" "I saw a big knife." "What, didn't you?" "Oh no, I saw blades. There were rodents covered with blades." I saw demons. They all wandered out, looking at each other, confused how each of them had seen such a different image. The tour finished, and the crowd separated, and the various people went back to their hotels. One of the four, later that night, woke with a start, thinking he could hear scratching noises round his room. He'd been dreaming a horrible image of various rodents, mice, rats, covered with razor blades that had sharp claws and were coming, and they were trying to rub themselves against him, cutting his skin, peeling his skin, then eating the remains. He pulled himself up onto the bed, moved back, looking around, reaching for the light switch on the side. The slight side light came up, and there appeared to be movement on the floor. He sat there praying and rocking, wondering what to do. Suddenly, there was a movement at the door, and it seemed to open a crack, and a rat came running in. He screamed and ran, heading for the window, not caring, smashing through it, out into the street. As he fell, he hurt his ankle landing and proceeded to run through the dark in nothing but his night clothes. Turning behind him, he heard a scurrying, and he hit the road, sticking to the back streets, trying to remember how to get to the main road, running. The scurrying noise continued. He headed round a corner, trying to find somewhere dark, curled up, and looked out, hoping that it would go. But even in the dark, all he could hear was the clicks and the clatter of feet. He curled up tighter and tighter, hoping that it would end. Then he saw a stream of rodents come out of the side alley. He got up, knowing there was no other way out, and started running towards them, thinking that they couldn't really be the rats of his dream. Maybe he could get over them. Not looking, closing his eyes, he ran, realizing too late as his feet went down, and he felt the slicing and cutting feeling on his leg. His leg collapsed under him as the rats and mice swarmed over, cutting, and all his last thoughts were the feeling of blades, claws, and teeth. At the same time, in another hotel, a woman was running through the corridors, screaming, yet nobody heard her. Behind her, there seemed to be a loud noise as a large, dark-robed figure with a beard, red eyes, scraggly hair, and a very large knife walked calmly towards her. She backed away, screaming, begging no, as she went to another corridor. But the corridors seemed to go forever. There was always another corridor. The turnings weren't any turnings she remembered. Running from room to room, she'd go into one, try and hide, and then she'd still hear the slow, steady footsteps coming towards her. It was dark. There were shadows flickering around. There was a slight iron smell, and the smell of body odour and dirty flesh. And she knew that this could only be the mad monk, and the mad monk was coming to get her. She crashed out of the room she'd gone in again, looking down the corridor, and she could just see the smile and the bad teeth as he looked and leered and continued his slow walk towards her. Her body was tiring as she ran. Her energy was running low. She had to do something. She turned round, got to a corner and saw a dead end. She flattened herself against the wall and looked up. The mad monk came round the corner, knife high, smiling, walking slowly towards her. She passed out. I never saw or thought of anything again. In yet another hotel, a man was there, dreaming of demons. Waking, he got up and he thought he had to pray. He needed a church. He headed out of the hotel, walking through the streets, trying to find, looking up, seeing the moon reflect over the gold-covered domes of the churches in St. Petersburg, heading in that direction. He started to feel hot, looking behind him. A red image kind of appeared almost through flames. He screamed as a cloven-hooved demon seemed to appear through, looked at him with fire coming from his eyes. He ran, heading for the church, running over the canals, over small bridges, chased by the demon, knowing if he could get to the church he would be safe, turning down one corridor to see another demon of another form coming down it. He moved. There had to be other alleys, but the alleys looked like corridors. His mind was changing. He couldn't keep track of what's going on. He ran and ran and ran. And then there was relief in his eye as he made it. The great church was in front of him. He opened the doors, stepped in, slamming them, barring them behind him, turning, and then slowly walking through, heading round, heading for where he knew the altar had to be. He heard a vague chanting in the background and paused. He didn't recognize the Latin, but if there were priests here and they were chanting, he was safe. No demon would get him in a place of worship. He walked slowly, creeping, still scared, wondering what they were praying. Something seemed odd. The shadows seemed too strong. The light seemed too weak. There was something uncomfortable about this church. Suddenly he didn't want to be here. He didn't like the chanting. He turned and looked over his shoulder and thought about the demons on the street. Shook his head. No, the priests were going to be his saviours. He walked through slowly, then turned and saw in utter horror. There were the black-clad robes of priests, with red sashes, hoods up, various candles, what would seem at first glance like a potential normal ritual if it wasn't for the sharp serrated blade in their hands. The red fluid scattered over the altar on the floor, and the strange swirling patterns that went round it. He went through, looked at them. They looked up. His eyes widened, recognizing the person that seemed to be the chief performing the ritual, who smiled. "Come, my son, come." The voice seemed the same, the shape seemed the same, but the face could not be seen. It couldn't be the curator. No, that was wrong. He stood still, starting to back away. No. Come. His legs, against his will, were moving forward, forcing him to move one step at a time closer to the dread altar. Come and meet the master. Did you like his works? You will join them. Soon. The time is coming. Fighting, trying to pull back, he couldn't stop himself. His legs, his body, judderingly, slowly, moved closer and closer and closer. When he was close enough, two of the robed figures grabbed his arm, pulled him, leaning him over the great altar, back, chest up. Another one ripped open his clothing, baring his chest. He could see now the eyes and the vision of the curator, but with a black and fire swirling in his eyes as he lifted his knife, smiled. The Lord will like his sacrifice. And the blade plunged downwards. Last of the four hadn't gone to bed. He was in the bar. What had seen him had disturbed him, and he was having many drinks to get over it. He was way past sober when he stopped and thought, thinking about the image. He moved out onto the dark streets, stumbling, thinking about Nostradamus. The image he had seen seemed to be the various forms of Rasputin's death. He was dragged along, walking until he came to the palace. The door seemed ajar and he slipped in, seeing the opulent rooms, the carvings, the paintings on the ceiling. He crept through, finding the small stairs that led down to the cellars, where Rasputin had been given his last entertainment. He knew that down there was a mock-up of the last day of Rasputin. But as he walked down, he could see flickering lights of candles, but none of the waxworks. There was a table with food on it, and he thought, after being so drunk, maybe he ought to eat something. But then he saw the glass of wine and smiled, going over, drinking the glass of wine, sat in the chair where Rasputin had had his final meal, not realizing he was drinking from the poisoned glass, where Rasputin had had his final drink. Drinking it down, putting it down, he felt cramps in his stomach, started to sweat, feeling ill. Having smelt as he drank the vague scents of bitter almonds. Poison was all he could think. He got up, turning to run. Looking down, he saw there was a gun. Maybe if anyone came, that could help. Grabbing the gun, he ran through. As he was running out onto the street, he saw there was a way down, and he went to jump off the balcony, suddenly realizing as he did, a rope slipped round his neck. He dropped. It jerked sharply. He felt something happen sharp with his neck. On the ground, his body wasn't working properly. As he pulled himself through the streets, searching for help, he needed help. Suddenly, the pain was too much. He got to the river. He had the gun. He looked at it. He couldn't control his hand as it pointed towards him. The trigger pulled and he felt the bullet's impact, and then fell off the side of the bridge he was on into the water, having suffered the same fate as Rasputin. The next day, the gallery opened, and the main event. The public came in and swarmed, looking with fear and horror as they went into the dread gallery of Rasputin. His main image was there, but there seemed to be a slight smile and stronger feel to the image now. And when they looked round the sides, the pictures contained a picture of a grand church and a man being sacrificed. A man curled up, hunched in an alley, being eaten by mice and rats. A woman in the corridor of a palace. An unknown figure with a knife above her. And a multi-part kind of montage of various points of what looked like Rasputin's death, and a man being poisoned, shot, hung and drowned. Very few people stayed for long. The police were confused about 4 prominent missing people, and even more confused when numbers of others went missing, the only correlating thing being that they had been to see that particular gallery. No nutkins. Oh, I only just picked up that last idea. Not a bad one, Tootie. So what did you think of that? It was something a little different to usual. Almost 4 very small horror stories in one. Glad you enjoyed it. I always get caught out by the amount of time on the YouTube lag. Well, as was said, next week we have the last of the Mansions of Madness. No, but you did get your mice, Tootie. And then the full-length version coming out on Saturday, which is the start of us going to a weekly. So the next one after that will be the following Saturday, with Saturdays being at 5 o'clock UK time. Thank you if anyone else has watched this long. Please remember, subscribe, it really helps the channel. Like, helps getting other people to see it. And we have Patreon, where you can come, get involved in the conversation and help develop the stories that we tell. All of that said, farewell for a couple of weeks, and I will schedule and I will put out through the channel posting when the next one will be. Farewell for now.